Thank you for coming. Council would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung traditional owners of this land and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the Greater Geelong community today. This meeting is going to be broadcast on the internet, so we are live streaming this meeting tonight. As a visitor in a public gallery, you may be filmed. By remaining in the public gallery, you consent to being filmed and for the recording of you to be made publicly available by the Council. A copy of the Council's live streaming and recording of Council meetings policy is available at the back of the room and on Council's website. Please speak to one of the staff members if you have any questions. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to City Hall, and thank you very much for coming. It's a great privilege to be in the chair tonight and for my very first council meeting, so please bear with me as we get through this tonight. I'd love to welcome especially our Mayor, Josie Horn, and the other youth councillors I can see in the front row. Thank you for coming, and we'd like to hear tonight from you, Josie, in a moment around your year as a youth councillor. I'd also like to acknowledge we've got the Chair, John Stevens, of the Tourism Board in Geelong, and the ED, Brett Ince, in the house tonight, so welcome to you both. I'm keen to make sure that this meeting is engaging, and for those of you who have made the effort to come along tonight or who are watching online. So our councillors will be staying within some time limits set by our meetings procedure, local law, when speaking on above items at the agenda tonight. What I want to do is hear from as many of you as we can in public question time and submission time. And each person who has attended tonight to either ask a question or make a submission will have to be, I will ask them to stay within the time limits, the 3-minute time limit. I'm not going to allow questions that we've had before, simply because we've got so many different issues on council to deal with, and that we are interested in hearing from you. We will be using a timer tonight to keep everybody on track, and I'll give the speakers a wind up when you're approaching the end of your allotted time. And I'll ask that you respect the council and other members of the public who want to ask questions by finishing when your time is up. Public question and submission time will go for approximately 45 minutes, and then we'll move into the council reports. So I have apologies from Mayor Asher. Any other apologies to be noted?
Councillor Jim Mason.
Councillor Jim Mason is about to request a leave of absence in the next section, so I'm assuming he's an apology as well. That leads me to the leave of absence. Councillor Mason's requested a leave of absence from the 26th to the 27th of November. Can I please have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Mansfield, Councillor Harwood, all those in favour?
Could he extend it? Is that possible?
All those in favour? Thank you, that is carried. Confirmation of the minutes. Can I have a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting of the 29th of October 2019? Councillor Murray. Councillor Sullivan to second. All those in favour? Thank you, that is carried. Declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest in relation to tonight's agenda? Councillor Murnane.
In relation to item, I'm just trying to find the item.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, thank you. If any other conflicts arise during the meeting, please let me know. The Youth Council address. So I'd like to now welcome Josie Horn to make her 4th and final address to the Council on behalf of the Youth Council.
Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people, the traditional owners of this land, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this room today and in our municipality. Good evening, Deputy Mayor Grisbeck, Greater Geelong councillors and directors, youth councillors and the gallery. My name is Josie Horn. I'm the Junior Mayor for Geelong, and tonight I will outline what the Youth Council has achieved in the past 2 months. Geelong's inaugural Youth Summit was held on the 31st of October, and it was a great success. Here, we posed numerous issues in relation to how they affect young people and empowered youth to create achievable solutions. I'd like to emphasise to those present at the Youth Council that although many solutions were posed, the Youth Council has not had the time to review all, but this will be a high priority for the Youth Council of 2020. Young people are extremely engaged in local issues, with 94% of respondents stating that they enjoyed the Youth Summit. Only 25% of people knew about the Youth Council prior to the Youth Summit, yet 58% were interested in being involved next year. Geelong's youth are ready to be the leaders of the future, and this emphasises the significance and the relevance of the Youth Council. The Youth Summit exemplified the positives that come with community engagement. Thus, Youth Council is excited to be in the process of organising a social media presence for 2020 in order for us to effectively communicate with our peers. Further, as Junior Mayor, it is my duty to reiterate the evidence that is presented to Youth Council and make recommendations to Council on behalf of my peers. As co-host of the Youth Summit, I asked everyone in that room whether they supported the Geelong Council declaring a climate emergency. And standing up in front of that room, I did not see a single hand not go up. This was filmed on video, and the evidence is then reflected in the evaluation survey, in which 95% of respondents stated that they were in favour of the Geelong Council declaring a climate emergency. These facts are irrefutable, and Geelong's youth need a recognition of the climate crisis by our representatives so that we can all act accordingly. Youth Council are aware that Council has recently voted against this, yet we strongly urge Council to reconsider your position. We can no longer be blissfully ignorant and ignore the facts. A climate emergency declaration is imperative to the prosperity of all young people. Thus, on behalf of the Geelong Youth Council and young people of Geelong, I urge and implore Council to reconsider declaring a climate emergency. For the 2019 Youth Councillors, this role has been beyond what we could have imagined. We have advocated for the environment, recognised the achievements of our peers, and have hosted Geelong's first ever Youth Summit. I'd like to formally thank all Geelong councillors for meeting with youth councillors and the greater Geelong community, especially the youth, for embracing us. Finally, thank you to the many council workers who have put in tireless hours throughout the year to make this possible. In particular, Blake Edwards, Laura Costello and Hinga Fletcher. I am honoured to have held this position and am excited to see what the future of the Youth Council holds. Young people are optimists. We are empathetic and we always remain hopeful. This hope and happiness has been a defining feature of the Youth Council of 2019, and I trust that the Geelong Council and community will continue to value the youth voice, one of hope, happiness and empathy. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. That was really... Okay, thank you. Thank you, Josie, for your report tonight. And look, thank you all of the youth councillors that were part of the 2019 Youth Council. As councillors, we will take on your feedback and consider those when making future decisions. And it's also great to hear the voice of the younger community. So we thank you very much. Another round of applause, please, for our junior council. Okay, so the next agenda...
Acting Mayor
yes.
Griffith, could I just make a
you
quick
may,
comment?
Councillor
Is that okay?
Yes.
These young people are amazing future leaders of Geelong, but just one of the recognition I noticed on social media today is that young Jager Fawcett also was awarded the Principals Award at St Joseph's College, I think yesterday, so well done to Jager.
Okay, thank you. I'll skip next to the next agenda item. Agenda item is the public question and submission time. It is specifically available for questions and submissions rather than as a forum for a discussion. Questions and submissions provided in writing will be considered first, and then after that everyone in the gallery will be given an opportunity to ask a question or make a submission if they wish to. As mentioned earlier, I want to keep the meeting moving, so please make your questions as brief as you can, and discussion will be entered into if clarification is required. Each person asking a question will be given 3 minutes to speak, and if you could state your name before you ask your question, that would be great. I'm going to call on the first question. Let me just say quickly though, as Council has considered and debated the issue of declaring a climate emergency at our September Council meeting, we've got a number of questions tonight relating to the same issue. I'll be willing to hear the questions and submissions tonight, but I'm mindful that as a council we've given consideration to the public question time to that issue already, and if it's a question that is repetitive, I may disallow it in order to provide fair opportunity for others for us to hear their questions as well. In that note, I will call on Erica Hunt, please.
Good evening, councillors. My name's Erica. We feel it's abhorrent that we are being silenced by the Mayor, who stated no further climate questions will be answered. A quick update since last council meeting. Now 75 councils in Australia have declared a climate emergency, and 1,200 worldwide, representing over 450 million people. More than 11,000 scientists around the world have signed a scientific paper declaring a climate emergency, backing protesters around the world demanding action. The 11,000 scientists say they have moral obligation to humanity and warn of untold suffering, and that there is a moral obligation to clearly warn humanity of any catastrophic threat. They state, "We declare clearly and unequivocally that planet Earth is facing a climate emergency. There is no time to lose," the scientists say. The climate crisis has arrived and is accelerating faster than most scientists expected. It is more severe than anticipated, threatening natural ecosystems and the fate of humanity. Also, a group of fire chiefs are pleading with government to an emergency meeting relating to the devastating fires and climate change, and requesting it declares a climate emergency, as climate change is accelerating the fire seasons. For clarity, please, while our planet is burning and in other areas severe floods in the world, can you please explain why you will not answer climate-related questions and rejected a climate emergency declaration?
Thank you, Erica. We as a council have debated this issue and decided the issue of climate emergency, and I don't think we'll open that matter up for debate at this point. The sustainability framework developed by the city, led by the strategy team in collaboration with the broad cross-section of city departments, and a consultancy firm specialising in sustainability frameworks is also being engaged to assist the development of the framework. The sustainability framework will provide council with the opportunity to coordinate its work to create sustainable outcomes across council, particularly focusing on environment, social and financial outcomes. The city has already considered sustainability frameworks of other councils, government bodies and private organisations in designing its own framework, and we look forward to receiving the framework at our February 2020 council meeting. Thank you, Erica.
Who's the consulting firm that you're working with?
On notice, we can reply that to you on notice. Yep. And question, thanks, Erica. We'll take it on notice. We'll write to you.
What is the cost of the sustainability framework?
We will take that on notice because I don't have the figure in front of me.
Included in my question. Is there a reason?
We'll take that on notice. We'll get an answer out to you within how soon? 7 days. Yep. Great. Thank you.
And will there be an opportunity for community to provide input?
I think we will take that on notice as well, but I'm assuming we would definitely, anything that we try to do at council, we'll make sure that we have community input. Yep. And
is there a reason why you cannot collaborate with, for example, Mornington Council, who have a climate emergency team, and who are already putting together a climate emergency plan to guide their climate emergency response? Why are you recreating something?
As I said before, we've already considered sustainability frameworks of other councils, and we'll in designing our own. So we are collaborating with other councils at this point. I'm not at liberty to say at the moment. Thank you. Yeah, we can take that on notice. Yep.
All of those questions will be answered, is that right?
All those questions that you've asked, yep. Thank you. Tina Thorburn. Hi, Tina.
Hey, how you going?
Good.
Okay, so Erica said a couple of things I was going to, so it's going to be a bit shorter now. So I have recently been looking through the Municipal Emergency Management Plan regarding what measures council have in place for extreme weather events, including heat and how that's going to be handled across the municipality. However, while I was doing that, I discovered Part 1, Preface and Introduction, and Part 1.2, General Principles, second paragraph, states, the City of Greater Geelong recognises it, along with the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee, has a key role in prevention, mitigation and mitigation activities to reduce the risk or minimise the effects of emergencies that may occur in the area. Part 1.3 iterates Council's commitment to emergency management strategies of prevention, response and recovery. Part 2 of the MEM plan is titled Risk Management. Part 2.13, Biosecurity for Victoria, states the biosecurity strategy for Victoria outlines a new vision for biosecurity management in Victoria and demonstrates our commitment to point, protect Victoria from biosecurity threats that affect our primary industries, environment, social amenity and human health. Point, understand and address emerging risks that may arise from climate change, changes in land use and increasing global travel and trade. Climate change is listed in the Council's Emergency Management Plan, so this means that Council already recognises climate change as an emergency and has been and is required to take action to prevent, reduce or minimise the effects of climate change. This has been required for the entirety of your term, as the Municipal Emergency Management Plan has been in effect since 2016. I would like to know why Council has not been acting on this. First point.
Do you want to ask both questions and then I can answer them?
Yeah, okay. I also wish to draw your attention to your climate change adaptation strategy, which was adopted by Council in 2011. The minutes of the Council meeting dated August 2013, where this strategy was further discussed, clearly lists 3 of our current councillors being present, 2 of whom voted for the amendment. As far as I can tell, the only part of this strategy that has been achieved in the warning is the warning of under-adaptation, quote, where Council underestimates the challenge posed by a climate risk and underinvests in adaptation actions. That's on page 9, section 5. Both the MEM plan and the climate change adaptation strategy are to be found on the COGG website, which clearly implies that these are part of Council's current operations. My questions, where is the cross-council adaptation working group? And why are you wasting time and money, as Erica has already said, to reinvent the wheel when all the ducks are already in a row and have been since 2011?
I'll give you the answer to the first question. The City recognises the need to adapt to climate change as a key strategic risk. This was acknowledged by Council in the resolution adopted in September this year at the Council meeting. The resolution also noted that the City has a strong record of reducing emissions, restoring and conserving biodiversity and preparing our community for the impacts of climate change. The conclusion you draw in your question is not necessarily correct. The acknowledgement of climate change impacts in the emergency management is not the same as recognising climate change as an emergency, but rather that climate change, amongst other things, will be taken into account in delivering services to the community, including emergency management. And the second response to your second question, the only thing I would like to say in response to that is that the Council has had a strong record in reducing emissions, restoring and conserving biodiversity and preparing our community for the impacts of climate change over a long period of time.
So is there a cross-council adaptation working group, or...?
I can take that on notice. Yep, I can take that on notice. Yep, I'll get back to you. We'll write to you and confirm that. Thank you, Tina. Sonia Van Hewitt.
Van Hewitt, Deputy Mayor, Councillors. I want to just outline about carbon offsets. One of the things that I do, I have to drive unfortunately, for part of my job. I also have to do interstate and overseas travel for part of my job, and I hate it. But I actually implement carbon offsets. And for those people who don't know what that is, I can calculate my carbon footprint, and I can then purchase through something called the gold standard an offset for the carbon. Now, it's not ideal because I don't want to be producing that in the first place, but I can offset this carbon by putting money into projects that the gold standard program actually has. It's an internationally recognised program. So my first question is that either on a personal level, that people on council, the councillors or employees, whether they can volunteer to put and offset their own carbon emissions by using something like the gold standard, or if it could be something that could be suggested or recommended by council to be able to do that. And the second thing is that rather than putting it into an international group that works on sort of projects all around the world, that perhaps that could be used as a seed fund to put it into something that's important for the City of Greater Geelong, in particular something like a solar savers program for the disadvantaged and the elderly who find it difficult to pay for their electricity. They're my two questions.
Thank you, Sonia, for your question. The Council will take the issues you've raised on board about carbon emissions and offsets, and I'll leave it to individual councillors to think about that in their own space. Thank you.
I'd just say I've added the link for the Gold Standard website so you can actually calculate your own carbon footprint and choose what you'd like to do with it if you'd like to do that.
Thank you. And we've all got a copy of that, so thank you. Thanks very much. Next question is from Phil Bolsh. Hi, Phil.
Good evening. Thanks for hearing me. I'm Phil Bolsh. I represent Transition South Barwon, which is a community group based in Belmont. One of our functions is research at the intersection of energy, the economy, finance and the fabric of our community. A serious economic contraction is coming our way. A growing number of economists say it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and that the economy is already in emergency mode. The climate emergency, the ecological emergency and the economic emergency are all related because the economy relies on a predictable climate, functioning biodiverse natural ecosystems, cheap energy and cheap debt. Here's why we're already in an economic and financial emergency and why we've been calling on Council to create an energy descent action plan. In 2009, our interest rates were at 7%. As a response to the global financial crisis, the RBA dropped rates to 4% within 6 months. These were referred to at the time as emergency level interest rates. Not only have rates never returned to pre-GFC levels, the cash rate is now below 1% and heading for zero. Despite these favourable economic conditions, growth is weak, wages growth has been flat for 10 years and our household debt to income is the highest in the world. There is no historical precedent for these economic conditions. Economists have no explanation for why this is happening because their models exclude the cost of producing energy and they exclude the cost of exclude private debt and they exclude resource depletion. When the growing cost of producing energy is included in economic analyses, it all becomes clear. Debt is a claim on the profits of future economic activity requiring energy. The cost of producing energy is rising because of depletion and is undermining the economy and our ability to pay down debt. In 1960, the cost of producing energy for the economy was around 1% of GDP. It's risen now to almost 10% of GDP. It's clear that cheap debt has replaced cheap energy as the engine of growth. In 1970, we created $1 of debt for every $1 of GDP. Today, we need $4.50 worth of new debt for every $1 of GDP. Asset prices are at historical highs only because of $140 trillion worth of new debt since the global financial crisis. As investors realise their holdings are almost entirely speculative, bearing little relationship to the output of the real economy based on energy, A loss of trust will lead to a major correction, rising unemployment and mortgage defaults. We've called on Council numerous times in the past to create an Energy Descent Action Plan, an EDAP, as a financial risk mitigation strategy. As yet, we've had no response other than some strategies to reduce carbon emissions, which I'm sure were needed, and emission cuts have been achieved, but these will look trivial in the context of the coming economic contraction and concomitant with energy descent. Why hasn't Council produced the Energy Descent Action Plan it committed to in February 2011?
Thank you for your question, Phil, and I have a response for you here. Council's response to the MAV, it's the CACIT, CACIT. I'm not going to say any further. The initiative, the MAV initiative, has been driven through Future-Proofing Geelong, which brings together a dedicated group of partners to collaborate on sustainability actions across industry, business, education, government and community. Faced with challenges like climate change, economic adjustment and growth, the region has pursued a collaborative and innovative approach to Geelong becoming more resilient and adaptive. It is not just an environmental risk response, but it also deals with economic risks. The program focuses on enabling projects which will assist Geelong to become more sustainable, more livable and more productive in response to the potential economic headwinds. Thank you for your question.
The CACIT program had as its prime objective the creation of an Energy Descent Action Plan.
Well,
what happened?
Might actually throw to our acting head over there, Rod. Rod?
Was that working? Lights on. Hopefully that's working now. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thanks, Phil, for your question in relation to that. So, Council recognises, the impacts of climate change and interrelation with, financial elements that you've described. We've incorporated that into the climate change adaptation strategy, but also further, and perhaps more importantly, into the zero carbon emissions strategy, which is our pathway moving forward to zero emissions by 2050, indeed 50% reduction by 2020. So I'm happy to perhaps speak to you in more detail on that.
What happened to the Future-Proofing Geelong department?
The Future-Proofing Geelong department was incorporated into various environment programs, and those programs still exist today.
The department has been dissolved, is that right?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'll take that on notice. Yeah.
And okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You can get in contact with the team if you like afterwards, and we can talk further about that. Thank you. Next question I've got from Carolyn Danaher. Hello.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Caroline Danaher. Now, lots of numbers put forth, and I'm not very good on numbers, but I am about education. And I think what I feel about what I've just heard from people is that I've heard about sustainability frameworks, I've heard about education, I've heard about resilience, I've heard about services to the community and preparing our community for all what is going to happen in the near future. And I know that good governments educate and inform the general public over the years and have done over many contentious issues. Some of them have taken many, many years, and some of them are still not solved. Like, few come to mind: cigarette smoking, AIDS, mesothelioma, pneumoconiosis, seatbelts, use of seatbelts, ingrained cultural female mutilation, not in our country, but these things are so contentious because they're cultural, they're religious, they belong to a country, and I think that that's been the problem with the climate issue. They belong in an ideology instead of in science. Even women being allowed to vote, it seems almost unbelievable, but that also has been a contentious issue and took many, many years to change because men thought that we weren't as intelligent. Now, these things have to change, and the only way we can change them is by education. And the only way we can help the general public, I understand that you all agree that there is a problem with climate change, even if you don't want to use the word emergency. But where am I seeing the educating of the ordinary people in Geelong? How are you doing it? I don't see it on the streets. I see big billboards outside saying reviving Geelong, but that must cost a lot of money, that billboard. Where am I seeing that we need to change our... I've gone off at a track. Let me find where I am. Putting in place to educate and inform the people in the COAG region about how we have to change our behaviour. And we will only change our behaviour by educating us. And I see things happening here, but there's not the general public here. Are you going to spend... I want to know how you want to spend the money. Are you going to send out leaflets? Are you going to use billboards? How much money of my rates are you going to charge to educate people that we have to change our behaviour? We have to change our behaviour about transport. Wonderful roads, people will continue using cards. We're not going to see electric cards right now, but we could change and make people enjoy using buses. People who don't use buses don't even know where the buses run. That's why they don't use them. The council needs to promote it. Smaller houses, we're using all this arable land. I see down on the Bellarine Peninsula so much of what's just been eaten up by these huge houses. Are the developers making money? Are you making money out of it? And I also see rubbish. Rubbish, I go round people's houses and I say that shouldn't be in that bin, that shouldn't be in that bin, that shouldn't be in that bin. How are we going to educate the ordinary people to live differently and change their behaviour? How are you going to do it? That's my question.
Thank you for your question. I've got a short answer here for you. Council's September resolution acknowledged that climate change poses a risk to the people of Geelong and Australia, and it requires a genuine and coordinated response. The Council will continue to engage in a timely way with the greater Geelong community on issues relevant to our region, including issues relating to climate change. I might just throw to Rod Thomas about the waste question. Rod, if that's okay.
Absolutely, and yes, it's working this time. Yeah, look, there's a lot of work going on in both those areas, both the waste and environmental education, particularly related to climate change.
Past my household.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and there's a lot more to do. We appreciate that, but there's a lot of work going on in terms of updating our website. We've got a lot of events happening this year and also next year as well. We're working to also provide grant funding to community groups to help get those messages out. So, you know, Transition Geelong type community groups, Geelong Sustainability, etc., etc. So we appreciate there's more to do, but yeah, we're ramping things up.
I make a suggestion from Footscray Council. They have somebody, probably they have to pay for that person, but I'm willing in my rates to pay for it, goes to every single road and says, you've done well with this bin, you haven't done so well with this bin. It means that every time they put their bin back, they think, oh, I better not put that in next time. Works very well.
We should have some gold stars that Rod might go out and put on our bins, I think. Thank you for your question, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next question I've got is from Lex Chalmers. Hello, Lex.
Hello. Thank you. I'm Lex Chalmers. I would like to congratulate the Council on initiating the draft Our Heritage, Our Collection strategic report and point out that it moves to fulfil an important action of the City of Greater Geelong Heritage Strategy, prepare a collection policy for Council's collections. I would also like to congratulate Dr Luke Keogh on his work. There are another 49 actions in the Council's heritage strategy, some of which are ongoing or in process, and I stress the importance of properly resourcing all actions in the heritage strategy for the future benefit of Geelong citizens. But I note that the draft Our Heritage, Our Collection document does not mention the heritage strategy in the local context, local legislative context, influencing the development of a collections policy. Heritage strategy achievements to date include the development of Council's Heritage Advisory Committee, and I request that the heritage strategy is added to the context list, as it is the Council's overarching strategic heritage document.
Ask all your questions.
Right. Yep. In the document, UNESCO's broad definition of tangible heritage includes immovable or fixed cultural heritage, such as buildings, trees and archaeological sites, or movable cultural heritage, such as historic items, artworks and objects in collections. The draft document deals with movable cultural heritage and refers to the need for off-site storage of objects, and to collections access being provided through pop-up displays and digitisation of objects. I think the off-site actually refers to the need for the National Wool Museum and possibly the Geelong Gallery. These would help to make some of the collection more accessible, but it would be far better if more were able to be displayed in Geelong's own Social History Museum, as well as being loaned to other institutions and travelling exhibitions. Buildings are the most substantial, tangible cultural heritage. Council still owns suitable heritage buildings which could provide both storage and display of Council's collections, and also some community collections. Of course, the former Geelong Post Office would have been ideal, but is it possible that Council would consider utilising one of its heritage buildings for the purpose of creating a social history museum, and this would take some of the pressure off the need for off-site storage and also make the collections much more accessible in appropriate locations. Thirdly, many collections exist outside and some are mingled with council collections. This situation exists because community groups and individuals are caring for collections, some of which should be part of the council collection, but council has had no or inadequate collections or acquisitions policies. Is it also possible that the collections and acquisition policies and storage will be sufficiently well-resourced to enable the urgent acquisition of significant objects held by the community at risk of dispersal to other places or at risk of degeneration in inadequate storage?
Your questions, Lex. I've got a response for you. If the draft Our Heritage, Our Collection strategic report at item 3 today is placed on exhibition seeking submission, so if it is passed as proposed in tonight's agenda, we'll incorporate your questions and submissions tonight as a submission to the draft.
Making another one.
That's
as well
great.
When I've finished reading it.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got no other further questions. I can invite questions from the gallery. Questions from the gallery. All right, thank you very much. Question, Jennifer? Jennifer's sitting there, I'm thinking she's not putting her hand up. Hello?
There's concern about the idea that high-rise buildings are an indication that Geelong is growing up. Recently published in the Geelong Advertiser, if this is an accurate quote. No doubt there's a place for, let's say, multi-storey rather than high-rise buildings, but it's the final height and the place where they are built that needs discussion. For example, the new council administrative buildings may be all right height-wise, but the other quintessential building, WorkSafe, is not. The city centre of Geelong provides a destination with a difference. Our waterfront wool stores heritage area is listed as the best in Australia, and other buildings associated with our maritime and wool industries give the heart of Geelong its character, and also the banks of the Barwon River through the city associated with the wool industry. Each of the inner suburbs have their own neighbourhood character. We can picture the neighbourhoods of Geelong West, known as Heritage City before council amalgamation because of its consistent cottage style and famous for the multicultural Paco Festa. Newtown with its magnificent Victorian villas, many built on the wealth of the wool trade. East Geelong and South Geelong, detached single-storey homes reflecting the wealth of the wool trade. Reflecting the early 20th century. The consistent building styles in Drumcondra and Rippleside, built at the same time in similar style due to the sale of parcels of land, and later the established areas of Norlane and Belmont. Growing up needs to be accompanied with growing in maturity, and to be clever and creative and careful and cautious enough to combine the best of both worlds, growth in appropriate areas and conservation in irreplaceable heritage areas. Overall, these heritage places are a small bit of the total area of council's jurisdiction, but a huge part in the total attraction of the city. There are plenty of other places for multi-storey buildings to be constructed. The city heart and the inner suburbs should be out of bounds. It needs to be acknowledged that there is currently an onslaught on the heritage of the city heart and the neighbourhood character of our inner suburbs, yet these are our greatest attractions. We flock to the centres of European cities who manage to be totally modern in heritage buildings. In Marseille, in France's second biggest city, and a coastal city like Geelong, tourist visitation has plummeted because the city's been spoilt by high-rise in the heart. Christchurch, New Zealand chose to limit the number of stories in its rebuild after it was flattened by the earthquake in 2011. Paris has built a new CBC called La Défense west of the old city centre to conserve its heritage places. Geelong generally has a good record with early identification of heritage places. Now the loopholes in our planning scheme clauses relating to the protection of these places need to be closed. These loopholes are contradictory or ambiguous sentences in the same clauses of the planning scheme. What happened to the strategic plan of low rise from the waterfront rising to the McKillop Street Ridge, creating an amphitheatre, so the height of buildings did not obscure views of Corio Bay and the Yuyangs? These views were first designed by the Hoddle Grid, slightly nor-nor-east, for that very reason, in 1838.
Jennifer,
and now
sorry,
we're
can
going
I
to ruin
interrupt?
it.
Can you get to your question just so we can keep to our time limit?
Could Council please urgently consider these matters relating to the city centre in liaison with the Geelong Authority?
Thank you for your question.
That's the first
Got the first one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Question 2. The Minister for Planning, Richard Wynne, replied to correspondence in November 2016 from the Chair Administrator, Cathy Alexander, that public notification of planning permits for buildings over 5 storeys and with a floor area exceeding 5,000 square metres, which are determined by the Minister on advice from the Geelong Authority, would be advertised in the Geelong City notices. Where are these applications published, please, or are they published?
All right. I might throw to Gareth, our Director of Planning, at this point.
Sorry, I didn't get in early with the questions.
Might take it on notice, but I'd throw to Gareth.
Chair, is it working now? Yep. Thanks for the question, Jennifer. Look, firstly, with relation to the CBD, the City has been actually liaising with DELP and the Minister's Office regarding a review of the CBD structure plan and the urban design guidelines. So we recognise there's an opportunity to look at what we currently have and go into community consultation next year regarding how we can improve that, enhance, protect those really valuable assets, like the heritage assets and the likes, and to get some clarity or further clarity regarding what the expectations of our community are for heights and the likes and the built form going forward. So that's definitely a process that I think will help and be consistent with your messaging there. With regarding the advertising process where the project's referred through the Minister, I'll have to take on notice on actually how they're doing it. I'm not clear, I wouldn't be clear myself, as you know, the DELP and that facilitate the process, so we've kept a little bit of arm's length of it, so apologies for that, but I'll have to get back to you and I can give you a call tomorrow to clarify that.
Thank you. Quick one.
In relation to the neighbourhood character of Geelong's inner suburbs, could Council please consider a review of the parts of the planning scheme relating to heritage conservation and the various clauses to do with neighbourhood character and heritage precincts, and consider the residential zoning of heritage precincts as neighbourhood zone, not residential growth and not residential general?
All right, we'll take that question. Gareth, do you want to take that one on notice?
Chair, yes, definitely take it on notice, but just to also highlight, we'd love to have that sort of a conversation at the Heritage Advisory Committee and take their advice as well as a broader group of their views and thoughts if they believe there's loopholes or concerns across the broader planning scheme regarding heritage.
Thank you very much for your patience.
Jennifer, look, thank you for both questions, but can I just add to the comment and response that was provided to the first question in the context of it? Don't really understand that the council doesn't have a planning role in all the tall buildings that actually exist in the city of Greater Geelong. The Geelong Authority does have the has the responsibility to advise the Minister, and the Minister for Planning actually is the planning authority. So for all of those buildings that you've referred to actually have been given under delegation and responsibility of the planning minister. And Gareth did touch on it, and you did yourself too. Essentially, any building within the CBD precinct that's over 5,000 square metres or 5 stories high, actually automatically council has no planning authority in, and it actually is, those decisions are being made at the state level. So certainly your lobbying and your questioning, I'd encourage you, yes, thank you for doing it at our level, but I also encourage you to do it at the state level as well too, if it is a burning issue for your concern and the representative group that you have with the National Trust, because our planning responsibilities are zero in terms, essentially in terms of 5,000 square metres and 5 stories. So every single one of those buildings that the community sees has been given under authority by the Minister for Planning at the state level. Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer, for your question. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And just on that, Jennifer, that we did have control, but the current state government took that off us in the last council that was here. And adding to that, just before the state election last year, you may know that the state government also moved an amendment to the Planning Act that allows them to build upwards of 5-storey buildings next to residential dwellings, which is happening in Highton. You may not have known that, but certain developments such as aged care facilities are popping up in and around Highton up to 5 stories high. Without any consideration for council whatsoever. Put that to MAV to request that be changed, but at the end of the day it's a state government decision, so our hands are tied with regards to things like that.
Lobby state government.
Please.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got time for probably one last question if we've got any other questions from the gallery. No? Okay, let's go into petitions. Are there any petitions to be tabled tonight? Oh, okay. Thank you. So there is some correspondence. The Council's received some correspondence from the Victorian Planning Authority relating to a conflict of interest matter that it raised at a previous council meeting. I'll just table that correspondence for the record and that will go into the minutes. Yes, Councillor Aiken?
Can I just make a comment on that, because my name's mentioned in that correspondence as well too. Yeah. Look, I actually want to thank Monitor Jude Munro for actually bringing forward and responding to this particular issue, which I raised during a recent council debate. What is important is that this document actually clearly states that the role of the Monitor is limited to oversight of the implementation of recommendations of the Commission inquiry, and that the Monitor only has an advisory role. And I think that's a really good document for all of us to have from the Victorian Government Solicitor Office to actually clearly identify what is the responsibility and role of the monitors, and certainly should help the administration in working with the monitors, because legally we are now advised precisely what is the role of the monitor. And the second thing I wish to say as well too, I'm pleased that Monitor Jude has actually put in place some practices to protect any potential conflicts of interest, and the letter does clearly identify, dated the 18th of November, that I suspect Monitor Jude has considered her dual responsibilities, and as a consequence she did declare her role with the VPA as a monitor. She did abstain herself from board meetings when there is discussions about the City of Greater Geelong, and she also clarified in this particular letter, saying that through their CEO that she had no involvement in the preparing or reviewing of the submissions associated with the recent planning associated with C395, which has caused controversy for Geelong. So I actually want to thank Monitor Jude for publicly advising what her role has been in this issue, and thank her for that, and more importantly also thank her for clearly identifying in a legal sense what is the role of a monitor, and I hope the officers actually do read that as well too, because it will certainly give a clarity about what the monitor can and can't do in the City of Greater Geelong.
Councillor Aiken. Section B, reports. Youth Council 4th Report 2019. I'm going to move that one, and I'll second it, Councillor Mansfield. Thank you. Obviously we heard from Josie, the youth mayor, this afternoon, and also we saw a lot of our youth councillors and Jager's still here, so thank you for sticking around. The report that Josie gave was about their activities and achievements in the last few months. We had 12 really engaged youth councillors for the region's first ever youth council, and officially they became our official youth voice. I must admit, I really appreciated the time that I got to spend with the youth councillors, both Councillor Aiken and I in the Windermere ward. We really got to engage with our young community and hear directly from them about issues. And I think we heard tonight from the youth mayor in relation to some of the youth summits, and a lot of the passion that they have in terms of the climate, the environment, and a few of the other things, and public safety and homelessness and all those topics that are always front of mind for us. I look forward to having a new youth council in 2020. And I think that we can build on what we've done this year, and I think that the youth councillors have really set a path for the next set of youth councillors to go on. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Grisbeck. I just want to congratulate the Youth Council on a wonderful year and on the fabulous leadership that all of you have shown. Josie mentioned that you're leaders of the future, but I would argue that you are already leaders. You're leaders now and have shown that throughout the year in the reports that Josie has provided us, and in as individuals in your meetings with the ward councillors and all the other activities you've undertaken, in particular the Youth Summit. I think you've shown real leadership amongst your peers and for the young people in Geelong. I think it's so refreshing to have that youth voice as a council. Young people are certainly less clouded by a whole lot of other issues that sometimes make it, I think can sometimes make it hard to remember what it is that's really fundamentally important for the community. And you see that by the issues that they've identified as the most important for them and their peer group. So we look at issues like mental health for young people, homelessness, safety and security, and importantly, and again we've heard tonight, the environment, and in particular climate change. I think that it is such an important issue for these young people. This is their future that will be affected by that issue. So once again, I congratulate you on the leadership you've shown as a group. You've been a wonderful group to work with as councillors and to listen to. And I hope to see some of you back next year. And as Councillor Grisbeck has said, I look forward to meeting any newcomers next year. And it's great that there's so much interest from other young people in joining the Youth Council next time around.
Any other councillors like to speak on that topic? In closing, I think we've set a great precedent for the youth to have a voice at the City of Greater Geelong, and I hope that other councils do have a look at our youth program and see what a benefit it is to the community and to those young people that are probably going to be sitting in this chair not too many years into the future. So on that note, I put it to the vote that we recommend to accept the report. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Thank you. Item number 2 is the Amendment C394 Bellarine and Corio Bay Coastal Inundation Overlay Consideration of Submissions. I'd like to have a mover, Councillor Sullivan, and seconded Councillor Contell. Councillor Sullivan, over to you.
Thank you. Just make sure that's working. Lovely. So the Victorian Government policy requires all councils to plan for a 0.8 metre sea level rise by the year 2100. To help guide our plan, the Bellarine Peninsula Corio Bay Local Coastal Hazard Assessment Inundation Report was prepared and released in December 2015. The report was prepared as part of the Our Coast project. This project identified properties that will be subject to future flood events and sea level rise, and is the basis for this amendment. The Our Coast project is a Victorian Government-funded initiative and covers the area from Brimley to Point Wilson. It expands on 2 previous climate change coastal research projects undertaken by the CSIRO and the Victorian Government. The amendment includes planning scheme policy changes and applies a new land subject to inundation overlay to properties identified as being subject to a 0.8 metre sea level rise and a 1% AEP storm surge event, as required again by state government policy. The amendment applies this overlay to 1,600 properties around the city's coast, including 1,244 residential zoned properties. On the 14th of May 2019, Council resolved to support the public exhibition of this amendment from July the 11th 2019 to August the 12th 2019, with notice being sent to almost 2,000 owners and occupiers of land affected by the proposed overlay. A total of 43 submissions were received in turn. The recommendation we have before us is to request the Minister for Planning to appoint an independent panel for us to then refer all 43 submissions to this panel for due and proper consideration, and I commend the motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Madam Acting Mayor. I'm not going to add too much more because I think Councillor Sullivan has articulated the principles behind the report. But having seen a number of these types of reports come to Council in the past, not necessarily related to sea level rise, but other planning matters such as this, given the amount of submissions, or more so perhaps the objections related to the number of submissions, being 43 submissions and 39 objections, I really do think that there's enough question over this this initiative that it should go to an independent panel to be assessed. And so I think we're taking the appropriate measures tonight to put that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Grisbeck. My only comment is to actually say it is a shame that the climate activists are not here actually to hear this particular issue, because this actually is an example of identification of the impacts of climate change. So the council's actually doing that, and it's actually also an action response in terms of the climate change issue, and it reflects that we are a significant coastal community in the city of Greater Geelong, and I wish they were here so that they could see tangible evidence that it isn't just words. The city of Greater Geelong is responding to climate change, and this is a significant piece of planning work associated with an appropriate response to climate change. We are acknowledging that sea levels will rise, and we are acknowledging it will have a significant planning impact on our coastal areas, and we are identifying that now and not waiting for that sea change to actually occur. So I'm pleased that this is here, but I'm disappointed that the environmental activists that have been presenting before council are not here to actually hear this, and see this.
Thank you, Councillor Aiken. Any further comments from councillors? Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. Look, I think this is just an example of the reality of climate change and how we have to adapt to it. My concern, and this is one that I've raised a few times, is that the 0.8 metre level sea rise is probably on most current scientific evidence too low, and we're likely to experience much higher sea level rises than what is outlined here. However, this is what the state government is currently recommending in their policies, and this is really just a matter of us being compliant with current state government predictions and policies. If anything, this is potentially a bit too conservative. I completely appreciate the concerns that some residents have about this issue, but as a council, we also have an obligation to the community and to our ratepayers to take into account issues such as this, and I think it's incredibly important that we start to look more closely at a whole range of these issues and how the climate will impact on planning and development in the future.
Councillor Mansfield. Anyone further? Councillor Sullivan to close.
Thank you. Not much more to add. I thank my fellow councillors for their input. They're all very valid. We will refer these recommendations, also the submissions, to the independent panel, and I look forward to the results. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Item number 3, Our Heritage, Our Collection. Councillor moved Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Murray. We have an amendment. Councillor Aiken. Councillor Sullivan, you've seen the amendment.
To also make the addition, item 10.3, and that 10.3 reads, note that the report identifies a number of collectibles are lost, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to announce an amnesty period to run until the 28th of February 2020 to encourage members of or families associated with the Geelong community to hand in any objects they would believe owned by the City of Greater Geelong and its former legal entities. Each item handed in is to be assessed if its retention will contribute to the collection catalogue of Council.
A seconder for your amendment, Councillor Aiken. Councillor Contell.
Yes, second it for the purpose of the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor. Look, I did read the report in detail. I'm pleased that it actually is being put out for public comment so that we can, those people that have a direct interest in the preservation of our history and collections get an opportunity to comment on. But one thing that did raise my concern was the report actually identified that a significant amount of the collection is actually lost. But it didn't actually provide any opportunity for recovery of that lost material. And what I'm actually proposing is that we have a method to try to find that particular material. And under this suggestion, that amnesty means has a meaning that council will not ask how the person or family obtained the artefact, but thank the person or family for returning the asset to community ownership and custodianship. I'd like to believe that this approach would mean that if even one historical asset that is found through this amnesty period will be to the benefit of the broader Geelong community, because that particular piece of collectible will now be in a safe, professional collection system, and it also enable the wider community to display that particular asset. I'm conscious that the terminology of amnesty may have legal concerns for some councillors, but the terminology is not done in terms of a legislative sense or a policing sense. As I said, it really is trying to encourage anybody in the Geelong community or a family member in the Geelong community that has a particular collectible that may have been owned by the City of Greater Geelong or any of the former pre-amalgamation councils, that they do actually bring it forward to the City of Greater Geelong, and we can assess if it does have significance and add to our particular collection. That's the intent of what I'm trying to express here. I think we've got a unique opportunity to try and see if we can find some of those lost assets, and this is just a process and procedure trying to come forward with a manner of trying to attempt to do that in terms of that process. Yeah.
Councillor Contel, second.
Yeah, I second it, but I'll reserve my right.
Okay.
Acting Mayor.
Sullivan?
Yep. I'd actually like to move an amendment to the amendment, if I may.
Okay, right. What was it?
Essentially, almost the same as what is up here, except I would like to remove the wording after note the report identifies a number of collectibles are lost, authorise the Chief Executive Officer, and from then on, remove to announce an amnesty period to run until the 20th of February 2020. So I'd like that change to authorise the Chief Executive Officer to encourage members of or families associated with Geelong community to hand in any objects they believe were owned by the City of Greater Geelong and its former legal entities.
Councillor Aiken, do you accept that change to the motion?
Clarification of what's
Do you want to
actually been
pass
changed.
Councillor Aiken.
Sorry.
We need a seconder for that
I'm happy to second.
amendment.
I think I'm being asked
You're
if
being
I am prepared
asked,
to accept
yeah.
it as an amendment.
Do you wanna-
I'm happy to accept that as the wording. I mean, I'm not wedded to the terminology of amnesty, and if it is causing, if it enables the intent to actually be accepted, I'm prepared to accept what's been presented there. Yeah.
So I need a seconder, so Councillor Mansfield to second, and then we can now speak to the amended motion. Councillor Sullivan.
I've just moved forward this amendment in a sense that you're right, Councillor Aikens, the word amnesty wasn't exactly clear whether that is our authority or not, but if we can reach an agreement, which we have here, that the general vibe we want to put forth, message to the community, is that we want to encourage members and families to associate with the Geelong community to hand in any objects of heritage, any treasures which may have gotten lost or misplaced along the way, as it may perhaps. We do want to encourage them to be handed back to the city for its citizens.
Over to you, Councillor Mansfield.
I don't have much further to add to what Councillor Sullivan has quite succinctly described.
Okay, so we'll put the amendment to the vote. Those in... No, we've got another opportunity. Do you want to speak to the amendment, Councillor Murray? Over to you.
While I appreciate Councillor Aiken's original amendment, the word amnesty I had trouble with, because I don't think as a council we had we could say we could enforce an amnesty, but even they don't have to be the Geelong community. I'm just reading that associated with. I mean, it's just a very small point because we're really identifying just something in Geelong there, but I mean, it could go Australia wide. So whether that just with the community or the I mean, it's a little point, but I'm just mindful of the fact that if we've gone this far, we might as well get it right. That's all.
Braken, do you accept a change to that amendment?
What I was just going to give an explanation that the terminology of saying a member of the Geelong family or families, because there may be families that actually have knowledge of material and they no longer exist. They don't. The member who actually was associated with an understanding, and I'm not that. Member doesn't, it just means that they were part of the Geelong community. Yeah.
Right. We will vote on this particular amendment as it stands at the moment. Councillor Contel, you reserved your right on the amendment, the original amendment. Did you wish to speak to this amendment before we vote on this amendment?
I've lost track of this.
So have I, Councillor Contel.
We're actually talking about, so why don't you just put whatever.
Okay, let's put this amendment to the vote, and then we'll have to vote on the substantive motion. So, all those in favour of this amendment? All those against? That is carried. So now we will go to the substantive motion, which includes the amendment, and we can go around again. So we'll go over to Councillor Sullivan from the original mover and seconder. Councillor Sullivan.
Our heritage, our collection. The City of Greater Geelong is the owner of a heritage collection of major national, state and local significance. It is made up of over 12,000 heritage objects, artefacts and artworks with an estimated value of nearly $28 million. This is spread across numerous locations within the municipality. The collection is incredibly diverse and reflects Geelong's history as a vibrant and progressive city. Council has a key role to play in the collection, storage, maintenance, interpretation and display of the items that reflect the heritage of the region. The report has a range of recommendations that will enhance our approach and help preserve and acknowledge our heritage. The report also highlights that there needs to be a greater diversity in the collection and recommends that to achieve this through acquisitions that reflect the unique character of Geelong. The report also recommends to work with the First Nations people of this area, the Wadawurrung, to support collections and exhibitions. Essentially, the key recommendations of the report relate to policy, resourcing, care, access, specialised services, and, as I mentioned, acquisitions. As Portfolio for Arts, Culture and Heritage, I'm happy to move this report for noting.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I don't want to repeat most of what you said there, but this strategic report, Our Heritage, Our Collection, was funded through the Building Better Regions Fund, a collection of more than 12,000 objects, as Councillor Sullivan said, with an estimated value of $28 million. It's spread throughout the municipality and it has got its challenges and appropriate sourcing to prevent many objects and stories from being cared for and accessed by the community. And the Council has a key role in this collection to reflect the heritage of the region, and it's the first time that the entire City of Greater Geelong Heritage Collection has been presented in a unified and holistic way. So the report into the use and management of the collection makes a series of recommendations, including for the City to care for the collection through industry standard collection storage facilities, provide greater access to the collection through additional displays, online collections, public programs and pop-up displays, and continue to maintain existing collection strengths, but also build the diversity of the collection through acquisitions that reflect the unique characteristics of Geelong. The City of Greater Geelong is not alone in striving to develop and implement a broad oversight over their heritage collections. And interesting, however, the City of Greater Geelong is unique in having two themed-based social history collections under its duty of care, those being the National Wool Museum and the Geelong Maritime Museum. The City of Greater Geelong is in the process of developing a comprehensive cultural strategy that will deliver a strategic framework across arts, culture and heritage. And this collection, Our Heritage, Our Collection, will be an integral part of the cultural strategy. The collection is made up of 6 sub-collections, being the, as I said, Wool Museum, the Maritime Museum, the Geelong Heritage Centre, the outdoor collection being the public art, bollards, monuments, memorials and plaques, council art, an artefact collection, and the old Geelong Jail collection, which is quite interesting. And also noted that Geelong is home to more than 20 community museums and collecting organisations. These range from historical society collections to industrial machinery collections and include objects as diverse as football jumpers to cars. I wanted to highlight a couple of things just from the report. The photo of the 1874 Geelong Gold Cup that was presented to the winner of the Geelong Cup in that year. It was made and manufactured here in Geelong and has a very interesting history to it. The owner had it and it was in the family for a number of years. It's been through a couple of hands, and even Kerry Packer had it for some time. And it lived in England for quite a while, and now it's back in the Geelong Gallery, and with the assistance, and purchased by the Geelong Gallery just within the start of this year with the assistance of the Geelong Racing Club. Just thought I'd throw that in. And I know my Latin. I did study it for a couple of years. You wouldn't believe that, Councillor Aitken. But the Newtown and Chilwell old motto, it's just my reading of it. Diec mon Detroit. It means God and my right, which is the motto of the British monarch, would you believe? It's on the coat of arms of the old Newtown Council. And whilst I'm talking about the Heritage Centre, I just wanted to bring this to the attention of all councillors that $500,000 was left as a bequest from the estate of Alison Euphemia Grant-Lip in July 2010. And this $500,000 was utilised in the 2013-14 budget during the build of the Library and Heritage Centre. Now, this $500,000 has never officially been acknowledged. There's nothing to recognise that it has been left. So perhaps it is time that we do that as a council to the late Alison Euphemia Grant-Lip. So a great report. Thank you to Dr Luke Keogh for his work on this, and thank you, Madam Acting Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Murray, any other councillors? Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. I'd just like to highlight a couple of aspects of the report. Particularly, I also congratulate those who've worked to put this report together, but it does identify a number of challenges with the representation of our existing collection, and acknowledges that perhaps it isn't fully representative of both our history and also contemporary Geelong. For example, there is very little representation of our First Nations people in the collection. There's limited cultural diversity and there's low gender diversity. So there is that is identified as a challenge moving forward, and how we address those issues. I'd also like to highlight that one of the key priorities is working with the Wadawurrung traditional owners with respect to this matter. It's incredibly important that any artefacts, items, or anything relating to our traditional owners is managed in consultation, because many of those items are not necessarily appropriate to put on display in a museum, as maybe it may have been done in the past. And so I'm heartened to see that there is that acknowledgement we need to work with our First Nations people regarding those matters.
Thank you, Councillor Mansfield. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Grisbeck. The point I just wish to make, I actually think this is a starting process in terms of understanding our history and our collections in Geelong. This actually essentially focuses on assets that the council does have, and Councillor Mansfield has significantly talked about that this report and collection doesn't really address to any significance the 50,000 years of history that existed before European settlement, and that is something Council is going to have to understand, that our heritage does include longer than just the European period. The other thing I wish to make comment is as well too is that I think the Council at some stage does have to address its understanding of the different collections that are outside of its current asset register. I mean, a good example is that the Ford Motor Company was founded in Australia, in Geelong, in terms of its operations. It was actually Ford Canada that actually opened an operations out at Norlane in 1925, and there's a significant motoring history that actually is still housed in Geelong, which doesn't have a permanent home, and it currently resides in the Western Heights Secondary School, of all places, because that's the only site location in Geelong that they could actually find to enable to house that significant collection. And look, I'm amazed when you see that collection. I mean, it has the first ute that was actually produced by Ford out at the Norlane plant, and it actually has the last Ford Falcon that came off the production line in October 2016 from the Broadmeadows plant, because of course the stamping and the engines were actually built in Geelong. And so I actually only see this document as the start of a process of educating us about our history and recognition of our history and our collections that we do have. I certainly would like the future that we actually really start adopting some policy and some significant financial contributions towards how we actually maintain our history and support our history going forward. I think it's amazing that we've got these assets in Geelong, and clearly they're not being properly showcased, and for our Indigenous community and for some of those unique aspects associated with our history for nearly, like Ford's essentially in, 6 years' time, it will be 100 years that they were actually operating. And so as a consequence, I think we have to work at how we're going to recognise certainly our industrial history that we had, and what we're going to do about that in Geelong. And it shouldn't just be neglected and left behind in school buildings. Yeah.
Councillor Bacon. Councillor Contell.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I totally agree with Councillor Aitken in regards to the diversity of the opportunities that we have here with some of our heritage and collectibles, and particularly around our motoring and manufacturing industries. And I think it was just the Manufacturing Council may have been that had a survey out recently asking for feedback in people's opinions and how much they engage with that period of Geelong. So I'll be interested to see what comes out of that. In fact, that motoring museum was down at the Federal Mills for a period of time. We're very fortunate that we've actually been able to maintain it in Geelong. And equally, there are many individuals out there. In fact, I was only talking to a couple in the chamber tonight, about some of the collectibles, some of the links to our heritage in the past, whether it be Antarctic exploration or industries such as the wireworks and other, that we're probably at risk of losing. And there are many individuals that hold those items at home at the moment, or perhaps in sheds and the like, and with nowhere to actually store these things, and not perhaps appreciating the historic value of them. We've got real risk that these will be thrown out. So I'm hoping that maybe that last dot point that was put into the report might help with some of that. I think the points that are covered in here, 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, where it talks about the policy that we're developing, the resourcing, and then the care and management of our collectibles is extremely important. So I'm really looking forward to see what the public feedback is on this, particularly of those that have some real knowledge in this space.
You, Councillor Contel. Any other councillors wish to speak on this item? Councillor Sullivan to close.
Thank you. Thank you to my councillors for the words as well. It's clear that around this table this evening that heritage is a passionate issue, especially when it comes to preserving it and collecting and preserving as much as possible. I will again claim on that. We do want to encourage members of our community, Geelong and Australia-wide, that if they do have any items of value or significance that could be considered heritage, that we will absolutely accept them upon consideration into our collections. It is also very important that we do work with our traditional owners of the land here. Whilst our collections here maintain 200-300 years of heritage, there are tens of thousands of years prior to that needs to be considered as well. And I'll just end on that fantastic learning about the Geelong Cup and its travels. And I'm not on page 5 of the report. There's a giant picture of a clock that was apparently on the Edina ship. And then if we can't find a place to display that in the Heritage Centre, I'm sure we might be able to find a hospitality venue in the Ballerine that would display it for us.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. We're moving to item 4. Councillor Manane, you wish to declare a conflict? Kaufland Stores in Victoria Advisory Committee, 140 to 156 Colac Road, Highton. Moved Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor Harwood. Councillor Nelson.
I can get my mic. Oh, there we go. We're up and running. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'll keep it pretty brief because I'd like to hear what other councillors have to say, although I'll just start by saying that certainly I, as a resident near this area, I welcome Kaufland to Geelong, but as with most planning things, the devil is certainly in the detail. I'm concerned about the proposed site and its cut and what that will do to the abutting properties, the abutting residential properties, I should say. I'm concerned about the lack of community consultation. Public exhibition went on from the 12th of October to the 12th of November, yet Council wasn't given notice of this until after the public exhibition was actually closed. There are 12 neighbours abutting the property, and from what I'm told, they were given only basic information. The advisory committee, which starts in December, is in Melbourne, not Geelong, which begs the question why they're having it in Melbourne and not Geelong. The latte line probably doesn't extend down to Geelong, that's probably why. And not even one person on that panel to be representing Geelong, which is also of concern. I have concerns about the access and egress. There's currently, as anyone knows that lives near Colac Road or goes down there, there's already 4 sets of lights along that 1 kilometre stretch of Colac Road. Looking at the drawings that look like they've been drawn by hand, there are 2 sort of lines going across the plans along Colac Road. Does that mean that there's going to be 2 more sets of traffic lights, so that's 6 sets of traffic lights in a stretch of 1 kilometre. Geelong or Vic Roads doesn't seem to get their timing of their lights well, so what sort of traffic chaos is that going to impact? Although the report does suggest that the committee will consult with Vic Roads, although I've been consulting with Vic Roads for 5 years to get a turning lane put in Barrowby Road without success, so I'm not going to hold my breath with that for a positive result. And I'll leave the rest to my closing statement and councillors for further discussion. Thank you.
Councillor Nelson. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting discussion we're having in relation to what they're now calling, I think, the hypermarket. In other words, I think the largest stores we're actually seeing globally. And there's been considerable interest up in Melbourne, and now there's interest in Geelong with Kaufland. The location is interesting. I mean, they're targeting the fastest growing area of Geelong, our southern area, through Armstrong Creek, etc. Through there, it's well documented. The site location is very strategic. And I'm cautious in my sort of support as such, and it is premised on, it's in principle, support in principle for the proposed development. There's much discussion to go before us, but Councillor Nelson makes some good points about who's engaged in the discussion and where the discussion is taking place, yet those who are probably most affected have to work the hardest to get to those discussions. So it's an interesting position we find ourselves in. And I find it interesting reading some of the articles in recent times on it that Kaufland has been referred to as an Aldi killer. And which is interesting because when Aldi came to Geelong, they were one of the most aggressive moving smaller supermarkets I think we'd ever encountered. And they were very, very aggressive in buying up land and having scant regard for existing businesses. I remember quite well. So I find it interesting that they may be on the end of a serious fight here for their business and their share of the market. But be that as it may, we're vigorous consumers. We're always looking for the next big shiny thing that we want to go and buy. So apparently Kaufland has everything. So it'll be significant. The debate and the discussion will be very interesting. When Warren Ponds was originally constructed, we thought that was big. Then there was Warren Ponds Part 2, which we thought that's huge. That'll never fill up. That car park is full daily. And now we see, I guess, Warren Ponds Part 3, which is potentially across the road, which and I've just looking at some of the diagrams there, the car park's bigger than the supermarket, so I guess that's an indication of the scale this particular property will take over down there. So, and again, Councillor Nelson's quite right in talking about potential traffic movement. Entry and exit points will be critical on and off Colac Road in particular, and obviously South Valley, and with the issues we're facing with the U-turners going into Aldi. It was already a major traffic issue down there, so there's a lot of discussion to take place there. So I'll cautiously support the recommendation at this point in time.
Councillor Harwood. Councillor Murray.
Yes, I listened with interest to a couple of the Cardinia ward councillors on this, and for all the reasons that have been explained by those Cardinia ward councillors, I'm opposing this. I just think there's just too many holes in this, too many gaps, and probably for the reasons that my fellow councillors have elaborated on. We have a responsibility to those residents that would have bought in a residential growth zone, and if this goes ahead, they'll be looking over a car park and a big box supermarket. The area need to be reclassified, I think, to a commercial zone. Is the development the position on the edge of the centre or out of centre, given its proximity to the residential land? There's been considerable scrutiny and criticism over the Victorian planning decisions related to Kaufland amongst business owners statewide over the last 12 months. So the Minister for Planning, Richard Wynne, last year set up this special committee to oversee decisions about Kaufland's planning approvals across the state, which I believe is running public consultations on as many as 15 proposed sites at the moment. So I just think there's too many ifs and buts on this one at the moment. This seems to put the officers and us under pressure in a short period of time in relation to this one. You'd be huge issues with traffic there. I mean, it's the busiest intersection that side of Geelong, and to put this in close proximity to that, I just think it's the wrong location. Sure, competition is good, it's great, that's what we need, but at what price? I don't think we need this supermarket in this location. Another site, oh yes, maybe, but not here. Thank you.
Councillor Murray, Councillor Sullivan.
I'll lend my words of support to what Councillor Murray just said then. We'll now have 4 major supermarket chains within 1 square kilometre of this area around Warm Ponds and Grovedale. The traffic is not suited to it. The dynamics of the block not suited. It's far too steep. We were not given adequate timing or consultation from the state government. It's a rushed process, and I will not be supporting this recommendation.
Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Grisbeck. Look, I'm a bit concerned from the tone of language that's actually been speaking at the moment, because in fact, if we reject this recommendation, we're actually saying we don't wish to participate in the process of the planning process of this particular item. The damage for us is that the panel's actually been constituted under the state legislation, and this is actually an opportunity for us to help influence an outcome. If we actually vote against this tonight, as being put forward, essentially we're saying that we don't wish to participate in the planning process, and that's something I think if we want to protect the community's interests and actually address the concerns that the officers have identified about this particular planning item, we should be participating in it, and we should be expressing our concerns about it. But if we vote against it, essentially we're saying we're not going to participate in the planning process that has been set up at a state level for this. This isn't a normal planning process. It is actually, the state has set up a statewide response to the introduction of Caulfield stores around Victoria, and they set up the advisory committee to actually hear public submissions, and by us actually saying that when we're going to reject this motion and recommendation for the office, essentially we're saying we don't wish to participate in the process, and I think we will be letting our community down with the concerns that have been raised by some of the councillors tonight. I think we should be participating in it, and we should be expressing our views as a council in relation to this particular issue. Yeah.
Councillor Aiken. Councillor Contell.
Yes, thanks, Acting Mayor. Mine was of similar vein. I appreciate and support particularly Councillor Murray's comments and Sullivan. I agree with all of that, and I agree that far too often we have these proposals put forward to us which seems to be in a manner that doesn't take into consideration or at least give opportunity to the community to provide appropriate feedback or allow them the opportunity to issue concern. But I think by rejecting this, we also eliminate our opportunity to do that on behalf of the community. So I think what we want to do is actually support the report to go forward, so that we have the opportunity to put a submission in whatever way that may be articulated.
Contell. Any other councillors wish to make a comment? Councillor Mansfield.
I'm taking on board all the comments that have been made by fellow councillors, and I certainly have some concerns about the process in particular leading up to this and the consultation, but also the discussion around what support of this amendment actually means. The first point in the recommendation is that we do support in principle the proposed development, and that our submission will indicate that we support the development and use of the land. It is subject to a number of different matters that are outlined in the report. So I take on board the comments made by Councillor Contell and Councillor Aiken that this is an opportunity to express those concerns, but it's still fundamentally saying we support the application. So I'm a bit conflicted about this one, because I think we should appear at the committee, but I don't know that we should necessarily be appearing saying we support it. I'd like the opportunity to raise our concerns at this report. I'll have to think about what the most appropriate response is to this one.
Councillor Mansfield, might just get some clarification from governance around this particular item.
Madam Acting Mayor, I just wonder if it's appropriate to ask Gareth on this. Is that okay?
Sorry, Gareth, are you able to provide some clarity around what we're recommending here?
Yes, look, if the majority of council are voicing a concern and don't wish to offer support to the proposal, you could amend that resolution rather than in principle support it, in principle, no in principle support for the development. And then what we basically do is amend 10.2, I think it is, to make reference to...
isn't it?
Sorry?
10.1, I think.
10.1, what you end up doing is an amendment to the attachment. So what we would do is the concerns we've outlined in the attachment already and the issues that we want to actually have a debate and discussion up at the panel, we would still do. But it would be based on you be coming from a position you don't support it because of those reasons, and we'll put our argument against those reasons. So you still get to go to the panel, you just what the officer's position will be slightly changed, and our direction from council will be about objecting to the development because of those grounds outlined already in the attachment.
Excuse me, Councillor Nelson, would you like to? You were the original mover of the report.
Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor or Deputy Mayor. I'm concerned that if we don't support it, we won't get a say. Is that right, Gareth? That's not right.
Not
so
the case.
I was talking to Rebecca. If we move an amendment on 10.1 that we don't support the in principle.
Seek some clarification about what we're approving or
Note
not.
the development.
For the Deputy Mayor, if I could say, council making a submission gives you a seat at the table for that panel. Just needs to have the submission. But officers will, of course, be presenting what the council resolution is. So if it's more in the favour or against, and because if that becomes a resolution as an alternate to this, that's what we'll do.
What about noting the development? Sorry.
That's okay. Councillor Contell.
Can I?
Let's go to Councillor Nelson.
Can I move an amendment?
Yes, Councillor Nelson.
Mayor, it's just been written up now.
And
Foreshadow on alternative motion, because it's now been moved, the original, so if it's lost, you should foreshadow an alternative motion if it's lost, and then you can put up what's being suggested by the officers in terms of procedural process.
If it's lost, yeah.
Let me get some guidance. Thanks. This is interesting. So
I think that's probably
What Rebecca's doing now, yeah.
Nelson, you've got the option to move an amendment if you wish. Otherwise, we will put the matter to the vote and then go from there. And if it's lost, we can then come back.
Indulgence of the council group. I'd like to move an amendment of 10.1 that we do not support in principle, and 10.2 subject to any amendments required as a result of 10.1.
Councillor Harwood, are you comfortable with seconding that?
Yeah. A government decision, but we'll...
Any other councillors wish to make comment about, or do you wish to speak to the amendment, Councillor Nelson?
My concern is that, from what I already outlined before, the lack of community consultation, the fact that the public exhibition had already closed by the time it came to council, the fact that the neighbours had only were given basic information, the fact that the advisory committee is in Melbourne, not Geelong, the fact that there's no Geelong people on that advisory committee, and the fact that there are so many unanswered questions with regard to access and egress of the site. I am concerned about the site. I'm all for the development, just the site I think is problematic at best.
Councillor Howard, do you wish to say anything in seconding?
I think Councillor Nelson's made some very valid comments about the lack of knowledge, the lack of community engagement, the lack of local, I guess, content into the original discussion is concerning. I mean, there'll be a number of people who would love to see Kaufland in Geelong. You know, as has been said, it brings greater competition to the market, wide variety of products, etc. And it's in a what is already a very busy commercial space. So I think from a location perspective, it's probably not in a bad spot given the activity that's already going on around it, which it would complement. Business brings business, but I'm comfortable with not supporting it in principle given what's been said thus far. And ultimately, it will be a state government decision. We can influence with some of our commentary as we go along, and we can perhaps take what community comment is available at this point in time.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the amendment? Bless you. Okay, I'm going to put the amendment to the vote. The amendment to the vote. Those in favour of the amendment? Those against? The amendment's carried, and we go now back to the substantial recommendation with that amendment. Councillor Nelson, do you wish to?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. To think then. Just from what I've said previously, but as Councillor Harwood has noted, ultimately the decision rests with the state government. So will our local state member allow this? If he does, well, that's up to him. But the local community is concerned. As a community representative, I'm concerned. We do want, as we've all heard, we do want Kaufland in Geelong, or Costco, or any of those big box stores. We do want competition. I'd love to see a Kaufland store in Geelong, possibly not in that locale though. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Nelson. Councillor Harwood. Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Contel.
Yes, thanks. I'm not comfortable with either of the amendments, but I'll try to explain why. I haven't had enough opportunity, this is the point I'm trying to make, to hear from the community as we would normally hear from the community with planning applications that occur through us. And as such, I'm trying to make an opinion on whether the development should go ahead or not, based on purely the small information and short time frame that we've had. From a business perspective and a commercial perspective, I'm actually welcoming of this development coming to Geelong. I just want to have the opportunity to understand what the community that live in that area, which I don't, think about it being there, and making sure that we're addressing all of the issues that we know will arise or have arisen or could arise in around traffic management, what type of development it'll be, how it will impeach on the surrounding areas, how it will fill in with the amenity of the area. There's all these things that, as a councillor, I'm sitting here today that I don't know, and in fact that's being taken out of my control because I now won't have the opportunity to consult appropriately with the community. So I'm not necessarily against it. I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to vote for it because I'm not in favour and I'm not against it, if you understand. And so it's really difficult, and that's why I was sort of suggesting, could we, I'm not saying have another amendment, but could we note the proposed development rather than approve or disapprove? But I know that's sitting on the fence. It's a real issue for me, actually.
Thanks, Councillor Montel. Councillor Nelson to close.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I certainly agree with Councillor Cantell, but that's part of the problem, is that we weren't given notice. Consultation already closed before it came to council, and at the end of the day, whether we approve of it or not, the state government will do what they like, and that's the biggest problem here, because ultimately the losers will be the people that are butting this address, which is my community. I live very, very close to it. I welcome Coughland to Geelong. I welcome it to Highton, but is this the right side? I don't think so.
Councillor Nelson, I'm going to put that to the vote. All those in favour of this amended recommendation? All those against? That is carried.
Can I get a division, please?
Division is called. All those in favour of the recommendation: Councillor Nelson, Councillor Harwood, Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Grisbeck, Councillor Contell, Councillor Mansfield, Councillor Murray and Councillor Aiken. Thank you. That is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 5, the sale of part of 137 Mercer Street, Geelong, in relation to the Civic Accommodation Precinct. We might get Councillor Manane back in the building. Councillor Manane, welcome back. Moved Councillor Aiken and seconded Councillor Manane. Is that right? Yes. Councillor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Grisbeck. It's my pleasure to be able to continue the process of the establishment of the new Civic Administration building in the centre of Geelong. This is essentially a procedural process where we did advertise for submissions associated with the proposal to sell land and do the land swap between the preferred developer, which is the Quintessential Equity Group, or their nominee, because they have multiple businesses under their custodianship. And this essentially is a recommendation saying that we have advertised the proposed sale of the land so that council can build its civic administration building at Mercer Street and facilitate Quintessential to build their office complex, which will border behind the back of the council's civic accommodation and have a frontage on Jerringham Street. This authorises the Chief Executive Officer to sign contracts of sale so that we can proceed to this significant redevelopment of that particular site location.
Councillor Aiken. Councillor Manane.
Thank you. I concur with the comments of Councillor Aiken. The outcome, of course, of 6 to 8 months' work of the Civicom Advisory Committee, who put a lot of time into this and had a lot of expert advice to guide us through this process, and this.
Councillor Manane, any other councillors wish to make a comment? Murray?
Yeah, just quickly, I think it's worth noting that the council advertised its intent to sell part of this land at 137 Mercer Street on the 12th of October, and the period for public submissions, the proposed sale expired on 11th November, and there were no public submissions received.
Murray? Councillor Harwood?
Look, I think this again extends the end result that we're seeking, which is to have a really fantastic 21st century civic accommodation built, owned by the community. And I think this has played an important part in being able to extend some of that opportunity. And so we've been very fortunate that, in this case, Quintessential has taken up the opportunity. And we've seen the end result that we're looking forward to in mid-ish 2022. And I think this, as I say, has been a very valuable process for the council and certainly for the community.
Councillor Harwood. Councillor Nelson.
Madam Deputy Mayor, this sort of extends, as Councillor Harwood said, this extends that civic precinct to the west, to the southwest, to the west, into Mercer Street proper. And it's something, it's a project that I'm certainly proud to be a part of the project advisory group that we had many lookings discussing what we were going to do and what it would look like, and I was also part of the library and a previous council, and look what that's done for Geelong, both locally and internationally. So hopefully this building will do the same, not only on the part of the building itself, but also for the public space that will create. So I fully support this sale of part of 137 Mercer Street. Madam Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Nelson, any other comments? Councillor Aiken, to close.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Grisbeck. Nothing further to add.
The recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. We are heading to item number 6, which is the Small Business Friendly Council Charter Agreement. Mover Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Murray. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. The Small Business Friendly Council. The purpose of this before us is to seek council endorsement to sign the Small Business Friendly Council Charter Agreement for the City of Greater Geelong to be recognised as a small business friendly council. Now, small businesses represent over 90% of all businesses in the Geelong region and are a critical component to driving the Geelong economy. The city currently delivers numerous activities to support small businesses and has programs in place to ensure that we are able to deliver on most of the requirements within the Charter. The Small Business Friendly Council initiative has been developed by the Victorian Small Businesses Council in partnership with local councils to provide small business with the support they need to run their businesses. When signing the Charter Agreement, local councils are pledging to work towards paying small businesses within 30 days. The city is already working towards streamlining the payment system to meet the requirement of this. Secondly, we are looking to support local businesses in managing the impacts of infrastructure projects, streamline the approval process when starting a new business, and help set up and support local business networks. With that, I am more than happy to move the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Murray.
Yes, I think Councillor Sullivan summed it up pretty well. The only addition I will make is that the only financial implication is that we will commit to paying invoices for small businesses within 30 days. Very nice.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Contell.
Thanks. Councillor Grisbeck, I'm not sure what to refer to you as today.
Yeah, we're good.
The more tangible efforts that we can put into this, the better. I think it's a good step it's a good start, but it's now really having to live some of this and making sure that we deliver on it, because the feedback we get, often from small businesses, particularly in the CBD area, is around the disruption that they face when there's infrastructure projects occurring in the CBD, and we know that cash flow is the essence to small business. A month or two of insufficient cash flow can kill a small business, depending on their trading and revenues and the wages and costs that they have and overheads. So really need to be mindful of that, and we've got a heck of a lot of projects that are occurring in the CBD in the next 24 odd months, particularly with the Green Spine and the bike lanes that have been approved, and I'm really concerned for small business in regards to those projects. So we really need to make sure that we're working closely with the business owners to try to mitigate the negative impacts on their trade. No doubt, the initiative of paying or trying to pay within 30 days, I think, is really, really positive. Again, for the same reasons, that cash flow impact that these businesses rely on. And there's a lot of other initiatives that we're working on, and I'm not saying this to be humorous, but we have got the free parking that's about to start on the 1st of December, which we'll be talking about more tomorrow. to the press about. And again, that's the main initiative for that is to encourage people to come into the CBD, to conduct business, to socialise, to shop, to spend money in those businesses in and around Geelong, and occupy the CBD for those purposes, so that these small businesses that are here can survive and continue to provide employment and continue to be able to maintain a living through the businesses that they've started. So anything that we can do to help these small businesses is helpful. We've just talked about a significant shopping centre that's looking to move into the suburbs, and whilst they create great shopping opportunities for those people in those suburbs, we know that it also puts more pressure on the CBD. And Councillor Harwood mentioned that the car park alone was bigger than the actual shopping centre. And why do you think people flock to those shopping centres? Because it's free parking, it's convenient, they can stay as long as they like, and they spend their money, and they don't come into the CBD. So anything we can do to make it easier for people to get into this CBD and support these small businesses, I'm in favour of.
Any other councillors wish to? Councillor Sullivan to close.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for my councillors for their words as well. Starting a small business is no mean feat. It's extraordinarily difficult to take that load on your shoulders, no matter what your conditions are. And one things I hear often is that when starting a small business in our region, it's where do I go? What do I do? What are the options for me for guidance? So anything we can do to help out is certainly appreciated, and I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Thank you. Item number 7, which is the 2018-19 Tourism Greater Geelong and the Ballerine Annual Report and Tourism Performance. Moved Councillor Murray, seconded Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Murray.
Yes, thank you. A couple of gentlemen in the front seat have been pretty anxious all night to hear this.
Out.
It is recommended to note, the Council has recommended to note the progress and performance of the Regional Tourism Board, being Tourism Greater Geelong and the Ballerine, and the local visitor economy as per the 18-19 annual report. And I think the headline on the front page of today's Geelong Advertiser was spot on. Region in midst of tourism boom. So whichever way you look at this report, these figures are very impressive. With a record 5.9 million tourists travelling to the region, which was up nearly 16% from the previous year, contributing $1.1 billion into our local economy. The region's tourist sector supported more than 7,500 jobs in the past 12 months, which is up 28% on the previous 12 months. Nights spent in the region, 5.5 million, which was up almost 20% from the previous year. So the very, very impressive set of figures. So the city's funding of $2.037 million to the Tourism Greater Geelong and Ballerina's money very well spent, as they continue to exceed expectations and look to attract and expect up to 7.5 million visitors by 2027. But of course that creates some problems, and I think the number one problem in relation to tourism is the lack of beds. So the Conservative number of 1,564 beds short in the region, and that's what we need to accommodate this growth. So critical infrastructure is so important. International visitation grew to 63,000 overnight visitors, 209,000 day visitors, spending more than $100 million. So there's many, many highlights throughout the year, but I think the highlight of the region would be the incredible achievement of Avalon Airport, with international flights commencing in the past year and with further airlines planned for the near future. It's an exciting future for the airport and the region. So a big congratulations to the CEO Justin Giddings and his team. And of course, when you speak about the tourism, Greater Geelong and the Bellarine, you always speak about Roger Grant, and of course we farewelled Roger after 26 years as the Executive Director. And his contribution has been immense. His legacy is what we can be proud of with a very exciting future. And indeed his replacement, Brett Ince, has hit the ground running, and we wish Brett all the best for your time in the chair. And also a very big thank you to the board led by John Stevens and of course all the hard-working board members and staff. Certainly a great team, very passionate about this region. So, Madam Acting Mayor, set of figures are very, very impressive and it's a very bright future for the tourism in our region.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Councillor Murray just did a fantastic job explaining item 7. When it comes to tourism, numbers, facts and figures are of great importance. And as Councillor Murray just listed all those important facts and figures, I gradually just crossed out 70% of what I was going to say. So I will not reiterate. Tourism is of vital importance to our area. As I said, 1.1 billion to our local economy in supporting many, many jobs. The team at Tourism Greater Geelong and the Bellarine do a fantastic job. This is a very detailed report, and I must say it's one of the most, not even just the annual report, but the detail gone into reporting to us about the annual report. It's one of the most detailed I've seen so far in my time on council. Fantastic work, vitally important, and I'm happy to second this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Sullivan, any other councillors wish to add? Councillor Manane.
I'll be very quick. Just like to acknowledge the good work of our previous CEO, Roger Grant, and very welcome Brett to the new role, and I'm sure he will do it justice. But I'd also like to specifically make note of the team at the. They have a great team of people there who do a wonderful job and carry out the will of the board in an excellent fashion.
Thank you, Councillor Manane. Councillor Nelson, and then Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I certainly want to acknowledge Chair John Stevens and Executive Director Brett Ince and their tireless work. Certainly when I was on the board, and certainly Councillor Harwood would certainly say some more after I finished about those two gentlemen. I just wanted to say a couple of things. I agree with everything that Councillor Murray has said. Justin Giddings has done a great job out there, and is a silver partner Avalon Airport. Is that right? A platinum partner Avalon Airport. Although international flights began on December 5, not in November. As the report says, I know that because I was one of the first people to buy a ticket and put my money where my mouth was and take that international flight. But it's not as much about us going out, it's more about people coming in. So the announcement of VietJet I saw in the Addy recently is also good for our tourism economy. However, as Councillor Murray said, we need more beds. So to all those people out there that have restaurants and accommodation houses, we need more. 63,000 overnight visitors. So, and I think you said 11,000 short, Councillor Murray, over the 12-month period. Is that about right, Brett? 11,000 beds. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, who would have thought 15 years ago that Geelong would have a shortage of tourism beds? It's an amazing testament to the work they're doing there at Tourism Greater Geelong and the Bellarine.
Thank you.
Councillor Nelson. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you. Just quickly, there's a reason why these numbers are healthy and continue to grow, and it certainly is on the back of the work done by Brett Ince and John Stevens and the crew down there at our tourism branch. and they are a hard-working crew, but quite simply, Geelong's changed dramatically, and what we offer here in Geelong is not what we offered 10 or 15 years ago. We look at the growth of Deakin University, we look at the growth of our health sector, which has a huge impact on people coming down here and staying. We've seen obviously the Geelong Football Club as an example, bringing more people down now with 9 home games. We've seen the incredible development of the Geelong Arts Centre, as it now is, that again continues to bring more people down and put a bigger focus on us down here. We'll see the gallery grow in a couple of years' time, which again will add to the tourism numbers. But fundamentally, one of the great things, when you talk to any visitor who comes down here, and they'll always refer to the bay, the beaches, and what's around us, our environment. Fundamentally, they can't believe what we actually offer down here, just from an environmental experience. So we're incredibly lucky in that respect, and we see. We talk about our accommodation and our demand for it. Well, we're seeing that being responded to with Holiday Inn and other developments taking place down here. So we see the numbers increasing. They will continue to increase as Geelong offers an incredible tourism experience to come down, and also offering great food and great wine and great produce now, and which we haven't done as well in recent times, but now we've been recognised and awarded further recognition for that development. So it just hasn't happened by chance.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. I would just like to say a couple of things. I think in relation to the shortage of beds, I've got many people that have said to me in the RV and caravanning community that they can bring their own beds, and they will also spend money in the community, and like any other tourist, they will visit the local attractions and things that other visitors do as well. And I think I'm passionate about sharing this region with all types of visitors, including the RV and caravanning community, and I know that I've spoken to Brett a little bit about that as well. We want to welcome them to the Geelong and Bellarine just as much as anyone else, and so I certainly will be having some more conversations with the tourism body about how we can support that community. One of the stats that I saw in a caravanning magazine that I have at home was that Geelong was listed as one of the worst places to be, one of the worst places for caravanners to visit, because they don't have the amenity that we have in other councils and shires all around the country. So I would encourage the Tourism Greater Geelong to encourage that type of visitation, and I know you do have education brochures and things like that to hand out, but I would encourage people to come in all walks of mode of transport and mode of hotel/caravan bed if they wish to. And I also like to note that now that we do have Western United now in our GMHBA stadium, that is also bringing another different demographic through to Geelong, and I know that the accommodation around GMHBA Stadium is often taken up on those nights as well. Any further comments to be made?
Right on the new ferry this morning.
New ferry. Thank you, Councillor Manane. Councillor Murray here to close.
So, yeah, and thank you to my fellow councillors for their comments. Just a couple of things. There's actually more people go through the Geelong Arts Centre than they attend the GMHBA Stadium over a season, which is an astonishing fact. A couple of other things. Just to highlight how Geelong is changing. I live down near the bottom end of Paco, and I've noticed twice in the last 3 weeks busloads of Chinese visitors walking around that strip, and it's probably true to say that the shopping strip probably weren't ready for them, but it just goes to show how the landscape is changing in that area. Another thing I want to highlight is, and I spoke about the need for extra beds, and so I just want to show you this comparison, or speak about this comparison. Our visitor numbers are 4 times higher than Tasmania, but their economic impact is more than double ours. So all the visitors stay longer, well they have to, it's an island, and therefore they spend more. Our challenge is delivering more experiences, improved product, and of course better accommodation to convert our enormous day trip visitation to longer, more valuable stays. Thank you, Madam Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Can I please have a mover and seconder to consider item number 8 as a contractual matter in confidential? Councillor Contell, Councillor Aiken, all those in favour? Thank you. Can I have a mover and seconder to consider the item number 9 contractual matter into confidential? Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Nelson, all those in favour? Thank you. Can I have a mover and seconder to move item number 10, contractual matter, into confidential? Councillor Nelson, seconded Councillor Murray. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Okay. Can I have a mover and seconder for the Assembly of Council? Councillor Contell, seconded Councillor Harwood. All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you. Can I have a mover and seconder for the planning delegations? Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Harwood. I think I saw your hand go up. All those in favour? Sorry. Thank you. That is carried.